If you want to make your arrival in Copenhagen Airport as smooth as possible, then this video is for you. Copenhagen Airport, as orderly as it may look, can actually cause some confusion to new arrivals, and even Danes don't know many of the tips I will be sharing in this video. A classic mistake, just to take one example, is to accidentally take the train to Sweden instead of Copenhagen, or getting a €100 fine for buying the wrong ticket for the metro. So if you want to avoid ending up in a whole other country on your first day in Denmark, I have 5 tips for you that will make your trip from Copenhagen Airport to Copenhagen a smooth experience. And if you stick to the end, I also include my favorite tip to save some money and get a better experience in the airport while you're waiting for your flight out of Copenhagen. But first, I'm Stephen Højlund, and I've flown in and out of Copenhagen Airport more times than I can count. I live and work in Copenhagen, and I help internationals like you navigating Denmark without the usual headaches. Let's dive in, because these secrets I'm about to share will save you time, money and stress, and that's a promise from me to you. Advice number 1 is to choose your means of transportation carefully. Personally, I always take the metro because I live right next to the line going to the city center from the airport. And that would also be my advice to you, as it's leaving every 5th minute. But should you for some reason want to take the train, which is also a good and fast alternative, you have to be careful. Many tourists have made their way down to the platform and not considering that the train they are boarding is actually going to Malmö in Sweden. If you fall into this trap and go to the wrong platform, it's not as bad as you may think. Sweden is not a dangerous place, despite what the media writes sometimes, and passport control is also very unlikely. And even if you are controlled, you probably carry a valid Schengen zone visa anyways. If you are an EU citizen, it's not a problem at all. So you won't get into trouble. In fact, you will just experience another country for a short while before you take a train back to Denmark again. Another check off on the bucket list. A second pitfall is Copenhagen's opaque public transport zone system, where you have to know where you are going on a map with zones to determine how many zones you have to buy. Spoiler alert, you have to buy 3 zones to get to the city center, 3 zones to get from the city center and to the airport. But many have made the mistake of just buying 2 zones, and that will cost you a fine of €100 if you get caught. So how do you avoid the shameful act of being caught without a valid ticket? Luckily enough, it's super easy. You can buy a 3-zone ticket or a ticket to the central station on vending machines or at the counter in the airport. When you exit the luggage pickup, you just continue on straight for 80 meters, then it's on your right. But personally, I will also recommend the DOT app. You can buy a 3-zone ticket or a ticket to a destination in the app super easily. Just connect your credit card in the app and you are good to go. A final solution is to buy a city pass for unlimited travel for 24 hours, 48 hours or 72 hours. You can also buy those in the vending machine or at the counter, where a human will also assist you with your ticket. Coming back to the metro, there are a few things you need to be aware of, especially if you take very early flights out of Copenhagen. The Copenhagen Metro is unmanned and runs 24 hours. Several times I have therefore left my apartment very early to go to the airport, only to find that the metro was not running. Sometimes there are track work during the night, and the metro will only start running later in the morning when commuter traffic picks up. They put in replacement buses, but they are not really convenient and they don't leave with the high frequency that the metro used to. So all of a sudden you find yourself being in super good time to find yourself being in a hurry. At 6 o'clock there aren't that many taxis around either, so you can really be scrambling to make it to the airport in time if you're not careful. So it's super important to check the metro line's operation on the app Reiseplanen the night before you go to the airport. In this matter, don't rely on Google Maps, as I happened to do once and almost miss my flight. Google doesn't have the latest information, and Reiseplanen is free to download, so just go and download Reiseplanen. If you really want to be on the safe side and you travel very early, you can also order a taxi. The Uber app does work in Denmark, but I would recommend you the app Viggo, which works much the same but has more taxis on it. I often choose the taxi option because I'm one of those people with a boarding phobia. I simply need to be at the gate before boarding starts. That's just me. Talking about taxis. If you take a taxi from or to the airport, be ready for a bit of a price shock. While 3 zones in public transport is only €3, a taxi to the city center will be around 15 times more. Typically, it's around €40, but then you also don't have to tip, which is generally not common in Denmark. Personally, I like to take taxis when I'm abroad because I want to have a good start on my journey and arrive at my hotel or Airbnb quickly with no hassle. But in Copenhagen, the public transport to the city center is so efficient that I think you can save the money unless your stay is not close to a station. Talking about being on time. You are now going home and you have made it to the Copenhagen Airport. You are hungry, so you grab a bite after the security check. Then you hear the boarding call for your long-haul international flight. You start casually walking to gate C, where your plane is boarding from. But all of a sudden, you see a massive line to enter the C wing of the airport. The sea gates are international flights going out of the EU, and therefore you have to go through passport control. Sometimes there can be a fairly large queue waiting here, and this can really get your pulse accelerating. My advice here is to go through the airport control as early as possible and eat in Wing C. It doesn't have the same selection of restaurants, so you can also buy something to go and then eat at the gate. But of course, if you are a daredevil, just wait for the boarding call and hope for the best. So far, I've covered your accidental trip to Sweden, your ticket in the metro, and getting to the airport and gate C in good time and orderly fashion. But now let's get into something much bigger. The most overlooked airport secret in Copenhagen is coming up next, and it could make your outbound trip a lot more pleasant. Most people don't know this, but Copenhagen Airport has a range of public lounge zones where you can grab a bite and rest comfortably. There's a fee of 200 to 300 Danish kroner, but then there's typically also a buffet and free drinks, which can easily amount to the same on the airport floor restaurants if you are hungry and thirsty. So if you are not in a hurry and you want to check your emails and get some work done before leaving, you can do so in these lounges with free Wi-Fi, comfy chairs and food. The lounges are Carlsberg Aviator Lounge, Eventyr Lounge and Aspire Lounge. And if you have certain frequent flyer cards or diners cards, you can typically get in for free and sometimes with a guest. I think this is a nice hack if you are arriving early for a long-haul flight out of the EU, where you typically have to be there 3 hours in advance, or if you just want to be avoiding sitting in a very crowded space next to the 99% of the other travelers. Now you know what most travelers don't. With these 5 secrets, you'll glide through Copenhagen Airport like a local. No stress, no scams, no sprinting. If this video helped you, give it a like, hit subscribe and check out my other videos on Danish transport hacks and what to see in Copenhagen, as well as other travel tips. Your next trip just got an upgrade, I think.